turning Venezuela's oil wealth into prosperity for the people. Venezuela sits atop what many energy analysts believe are the largest proven crude oil reserves on the planet, with upwards of 300 billion barrels. This figure exceeds that of Saudi Arabia and other traditional oil giants. Yet despite this natural bounty, Venezuela's economy remains mired in crisis. Hyperinflation, mass emigration, shortages of essentials, and a collapse in public services. What explains this paradox? And how might Venezuela harness its oil wealth to genuinely uplift its citizens? The potential in sweet crude and oil reserves. Venezuela's oil is not all the same. Much of it lies in heavy or extra-heavy form within the Orinoco Belt. Although heavier crude can be more costly to extract and process than light, sweet grades prized in global markets, technologies like steam injection and blending can make it commercially viable. With the right investment, infrastructure rehabilitation, and market access, Venezuela could dramatically expand production, raising export revenues that currently languish far below potential partly due to outdated facilities and mismanagement. Why Venezuela has not yet converted oil wealth into broad prosperity. In Venezuela, the state oil company PDVSA once fueled social spending on health, housing, education, and subsidies. But decades of centralization, politicization, corruption, and underinvestment curtailed production and revenue generation capacity. This eroded oil output and broke what should have been a key engine for development. Instead of building sustainable wealth, much of the resource income was spent reactively, on short-term subsidies and state payrolls, and not sufficiently saved or invested to benefit future generations. Lessons from countries that did it right. Many nations with significant crude oil wealth have approached the resource bounty differently, with long-term planning, transparent management, diversification strategies, and institutional safeguards. Here's how some of them effectively translated oil wealth into broad-based gains. Pushpin Norway, building wealth for every citizen. Norway's approach is often held up as the gold standard. Since the discovery of North Sea oil in the 1960s, Norway established a strict fiscal framework and a sovereign wealth fund, the Government Pension Fund Global, that channels surplus petroleum revenues into diversified global investments rather than immediate domestic spending. Today, that fund exceeds $2 trillion in assets, equivalent to over $300,000 per Norwegian citizen, and generates investment income that supports public services and budget stability. By insulating the economy from oil price volatility and saving for future generations, Norway avoided the so-called resource curse and created sustainable wealth for all citizens. Pushpin Saudi Arabia, diversifying through Vision 2030. Saudi Arabia historically depended heavily on oil for government revenue and GDP. But through Vision 2030, the country has begun using oil proceeds to build sovereign investment funds, like the Public Investment Fund, and diversify into sectors such as tourism, entertainment, and renewable energy. This strategy aims to reduce dependence on oil prices and create employment and economic opportunities for Saudi citizens. Pushpin Kuwait and UAE, enduring SWFs and wealth preservation. Kuwait's sovereign fund, the Kuwait Investment Authority, established in 1953, is the world's oldest sovereign wealth fund, managing over $1 trillion in assets, and aimed at preserving the country's oil wealth for future generations. Similarly, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority in the United Arab Emirates uses oil revenue to invest globally, securing wealth even as some domestic sectors pivot to non-oil growth. Pushpin Brunei and emerging cases like Guyana. Smaller petroleum producers like Brunei have benefited from prudent management, using oil revenue to ensure high standards of living and generous social benefits for citizens. Meanwhile, Guyana's recent offshore discoveries have begun transforming a previously low-income economy into rapid growth, with government frameworks aimed at ensuring oil wealth supports education, healthcare, and infrastructure projects. How Venezuela could replicate these successes to transform its oil wealth into broad societal benefit, improving incomes, public services, and future opportunities for ordinary Venezuelans. Key reforms might include 1. Establishing a transparent sovereign wealth fund. By saving a share of petroleum income rather than spending it all immediately, Venezuela could build a fund that supports public budgets, stabilizes the economy, and earns investment returns globally, similar to Norway or Kuwait. 2. Modernizing oil infrastructure. Reinvesting in oil extraction and refining capacity would boost output and export revenues. This requires technical partnerships, transparent bidding processes, and anti-corruption safeguards. 3. Diversifying the economy. Rather than relying excessively on oil, which historically made up a huge share of GDP, revenues could be strategically spent on sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, clean energy, and technology, creating jobs beyond oil. 4. Instituting strong governance and accountability. Ensuring that revenue flows are subject to transparent oversight and independent audits would help prevent corruption and ensure that ordinary citizens benefit from national resources. Conclusion: from resource curse to citizen prosperity. Venezuela's oil wealth is arguably the greatest untapped engine for prosperity on the planet. But proof from Norway, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Brunei, and emerging producers like Guyana shows that maximizing oil's benefit for ordinary people requires long-term planning, institutional strength, and transparent management. My take: used wisely, oil revenue can fund education, healthcare, infrastructure, pensions, and economic diversification, creating a future where every citizen participates in and benefits from the nation's natural wealth. The question isn't whether Venezuela has the resources. It's whether these resources can be transformed into inclusive, sustainable wealth for its people.
And start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore.